And we're live.
Hello and welcome to the internet show and podcast, The Mentionables. I'm Joel Furchess.
I'm Caleb Johnston.
I'm John Dunbar.
And I'm Clinton Wilcox.
All right, so everybody here should be recognizable except for the guy in the corner with a horse logo.
Yes.
Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and why you're here right now.
I've like long walks on the beach, cool moonlit night. Oh, wrong podcast, my bad. So I'm John. I'm a part of the Mentionables team, the unseen announcer, so I'm the one that does the opening announcements. And my famous line is, "And we are live."
I recognize that.
That's about my only claim to fame in this whole organization. So that's it.
Well, don't worry. There's not much fame to go around here. So,
And John is not an apologist, but you're some kind of Christian, right?
Yes, I am a believer. I hold modestly to the London Baptist Confession, 1689, Reformed, and I've have an interest in moderate philosophy and just how culture interacts with faith and how they kind of blend together.
The 1690, that was a good one.
It was. I was there. I helped debate that, so we're good. I'm also probably the oldest member of the group.
So tonight on the Mentionables, we are discussing, pop media, music, movies, things that aren't Christian, but, given the nature of our show, we'll tie them back in. But let's play some games.
All right.
yeah, boy.
Back by popular demand, we have video game or theology book.
Woohoo.
So the nature of the game is I will mention a title, and then my fellow Mentionables here will have to guess whether that title belongs to an obscure video game or to an obscure theology book. Everyone ready?
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so fittingly, the first title we have is Obscure. Obscure, video game or theology book?
That would be a video game.
That sounds like a video game to me, too.
All right.
Video game.
Okay, we have 3 video games. Let's see if we're right. Obscure is a survival horror video game from Hydravision, 2004, and it was released for Windows, PS2, and Xbox.
Yeah, I don't know any theology books in the survival horror genre.
I think it's called the Westminster Catechism. I'm not sure, though.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
There's a really good joke in there somewhere.
Get back to us on that.
Yeah.
All right. The second title that I have for you is The End. The End, a video game or theology book?
I know several songs by that title.
Okay.
But that's not the title of this game, though, so I can't guess song.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain that's a theology book.
Okay.
I'm also going to say theology book.
I was going to go with probably 1980s theology book, time around the 70s, 80s theology book in the vein of Great Planet Earth.
Okay. So The End is a theology book by Dr. Scott Terry on the Book of Revelation.
By what's his name? Sorry?
Scott Hahn.
Oh, Scott Hahn. I am actually familiar with Scott Hahn.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard some of his lectures. I never read any of his books, though.
All right. Well, apparently he writes commentaries.
Yeah, apparently.
Commentary.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, considering who Scott Hahn is. He's a fairly well-known Catholic theologian.
Ah.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next title is Dominion and Dynasty.
Video. That's a theology book.
Okay.
Dominion and Dynasty, is it?
Yes.
I'm going to I'm gonna go video game on that one.
Okay.
Let's mix it up a little bit. Have a disagreement.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with video game on this one too.
Okay. Dominion and Dynasty is a 2003 theology book by Stephen Dempster, and it's a look at the Old Testament through Hebrew theology.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Insomnia, anyone? I can just read that and you'll be good to go.
Right.
All right. Next title, Eternal Darkness.
I'm gonna go theology book on that one.
Okay.
I'm going to go video game.
Oh,
Okay.
man. I was going to say my soul, but no.
Yeah, it could go either way.
I was in Texas the other day, and I think that was there. I'm going to go with theology book.
Okay. Eternal Darkness is a 2002 survival horror game for GameCube.
Sweet.
GameCube. I think I've heard of that video game system before.
Yeah, my sister used to have one.
Nice.
It was big in 2002, apparently.
Oh. Clearly.
Yeah. I was a PlayStation guy at that time. So.
Yeah, me too.
I've always been PC. I've never really gotten into consoles.
Oh, you're one of those.
I am.
I recently got into PC gaming because on Steam they have some of the original Final Fantasy games that they don't have for console. So I started playing on Steam specifically for those and some of the puzzle games. But I've my gaming history is a little lengthy and all over the place. So I won't bore everyone with the details of that.
Sure. You know, I'm a kind of a PC guy myself, but there was a time during my bachelor years when I had an Xbox and a PlayStation and whatever the Nintendo game system was at that point, and we had a LAN system with like 5 PCs apartment, so that my friends could just kind of come over and everyone would grab a computer and we would all get on and play games together with one another. We played StarCraft and whatever the popular Morpeg on that time was.
Myst
was Myst a Morpeg? I thought it was a puzzle game.
It was, yeah. I don't think Myst was.
Okay, I never played it.
Yeah, so, we played a lot of Capcom versus Marvel too.
It was Unreal, right?
Yes, Unreal.
All right, so your next title is Rooted.
I'm going to go... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm going to go with theology book on that.
I'm going to go with video game on that one.
Okay.
I'm going to go theology book.
All right, we got 2 theology books in the video game. The answer is Rooted is a 2016 theology book.
I want to change my answer to theology.
Sure.
It's a theology video game.
That's right.
I think you got that in just before the buzzer.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. I'm going to read the teaser for this one because I think you have to hear this in order to understand what's going on with this.
This is
Rooted.
The last one? Or okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, Rooted. You were born to make an impact in this world, and you know it. You feel down in your bones. Apathy is your nemesis, and your hunger to change the world keeps you up at night. But no matter how deep this hunger growls, we can only make a meaningful impact if we are rooted in Jesus.
Is this Beth Moore?
I was going to say like Joel Osteen.
And here's the thing. God is not interested in your developing your vision first. He's interested in developing you. Rooted.
It's probably what top 10 bestsellers at a Christian bookstore. So
no doubt. Oh, wait, are there such things anymore?
Well, that's a good question.
Not that I know.
Not currently.
I think we still have one in Fresno, a Christian bookstore.
Oh, man.
So yeah, that was a theology book.
You're really stretching it on these now.
Yeah, it's a questionable term right there.
All right, next one, Devil's Dice.
I'm gonna say video game.
Okay.
Yeah, and given your current streak, I'm going to go with a horror survival video game.
Okay.
I guess a lot of them horror survival video games take their inspiration from theology names.
I'm going the same route. I'm going to go theology book here.
Okay,
it just depends on your interpretation of Revelation, Clint.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I know John is game, Caleb's theology. Clinton, what were you?
I was game.
Game. Okay. So Devil's Dice is a 1998 puzzle game for PlayStation.
Oh, it's a puzzle game?
Yeah.
Oh, never played that one.
You know those?
I think
everything else up to this point has been like horror survival. I was just curious.
I was just gonna say. I think he's saying that you jumped genre there.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, that's okay. As long as we don't jump the shark, we'll be good.
Right. Yeah.
I plan to, but anyway. Okay, your next title is Alter Ego.
Alter Ego.
That's video game.
I'll go video game.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's a video game.
Okay, Alter Ego is a 1986 life simulation game from Activision, designed for the PC and Apple II, and it was designed by a psychologist.
Interesting.
Yeah, Activision were the folks who made some of the Guitar Hero games.
All right.
Activision was the creator?
I don't think that, no, they weren't the creator. Harmonix, I believe, created Guitar Hero before going off and doing Rock Band, and then Activision took it over from them.
Oh, okay. Activision's old school. Like they've been around for a while.
Yeah.
All right, one final title, and then we're done. This one is Radical. Or Radical.
It's theology.
I'm going to a theology book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
theology.
It's
All
David Platt.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I spoiled it. It's in my library. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So it's theology book?
Yep.
Tell us about Radical, John.
From what I've read on the back cover, it was gift. It was a gift.
Oh, okay.
It's just about being radical for God. Like, you should take it to the next level. Like, go out and live in a hut and then give everything else to God, because, you don't need anything but a 1-bedroom hut with like
Really?
your family, right?
No. So according to the description, it's a defense of overseas missions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually have a book by Jack Hayford in my library. I don't know if you all know who he is. Pretty well-known charismatic preacher. I am not charismatic, but it was also gifted to me by a girl I happened to be interested in at the time. So you know how that goes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know about getting gifted books.
But we've all been there, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sister thinks it's funny now to give me a Joel Osteen book every Christmas and watch me chuck it across the room.
That is funny.
Yeah, you ought to record it next time.
It's going to be real funny when she gets 4 or 5 back one year.
Oh, you're a regifter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was video game book, and thus ends the games section of the show. Caleb?
All right, so on tonight's show, we're going to take a slightly different course of action. Usually we have a segment or two, and this time we're going to have a few segments, but we're looking at something a little different tonight. So usually we will give an apologetics topic and discuss it at some length.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, we're actually looking at un-apologetic recommendations. So we're taking a look at a few relatively mainstream media shows, movies, music, and we're looking at the apologetics application that some of these may have. So again, these are recommendations coming your way, and we're going to discuss why we think these are valuable for a Christian to watch, listen to, and what kind of use it has when maybe it comes up in conversation, or maybe you watch this with family and have an opportunity to discuss it afterwards. So we're going to kind of look at a few things this way. And if you like this kind of segment, let us know. And we may do this again down the road. But that's where we're going to go with this. We'll see what happens. It may be a complete train wreck. You just never know. So we've got a couple movies and some music. I think we'll actually start off with the music tonight.
Oh, cool.
So, John, you want to give us a little rundown of your recommendation here?
Yeah, so I'm from the 80s and 90s, and so one of my favorite bands, probably of all time, has been Collective Soul. They're a rock band. They got their start early 90s. And
did you start listening to them in December?
I did, actually. I did.
Oh,
that
did
was it was a great time. I will forgive you for that, because I'm learning about forgiveness.
No, they're one of my favorite bands too. So no, I'm right there with you.
But yeah, they're from Georgia or Georgia. Georgia. Ed Roland is the lead vocalist, kind of the head guy with it. He is the son of a Southern Baptist, as anybody that's done any basic research online can tell about the band. And so because of that, a lot of their songs have a certain religious bent to them, I think would be safe to say, right, Clinton?
Yeah, most definitely. I don't know how serious Ed Roland is in the faith, or ever since he's been with the band. I mean, he has a tendency to use some pretty foul language on the stage.
We'll get there.
And even in most of their early work, they were pretty clean, but they've started incorporating some of their new songs too. So I'm not sure how serious he is about it, but he definitely has a lot of religious themes in a lot of their music.
Yeah, and so regarding that, I think it helps to talk about, well, one of the terms, because I'd listened to a significant amount of podcasts, and I heard one from a theologian, R.C. Sproul. You guys may have heard of him before, but he uses, and I think Michael Horton's used it, homo religiosus. So it's RELIGIOSUS. And it just refers to this idea of humans are inherently religious. As apologists, we kind of view that as the atheists are just denying the existence of God. We know that God exists, they're just refusing to accept the evidence. And in a lot of times, and I'll probably get raked over the coals for this, but I think a lot of times atheism becomes their religion. It's something that they worship, it's something that they hold dear to. And so this phrase, homo religiosus, it's had its start Hegel in the 1700s, all the way up to Maslow. I know probably Joel and Caleb have heard of him before, being in philosophy and psychology and stuff. And there's one guy, a more recent one is Max Scheler, Scheler, did a lot of work on defining what we mean by that. And again, just humans are religious in and of themselves. And so a lot of songs are going to reflect that, especially if someone has somewhat of a religious background, which Ed Roland, being reared in a Southern Baptist home, his wife is, interestingly enough, a Jew. I think she's a practicing Jew. I think is what he said in one interview. So that in and of itself brings up some interesting conversations, I'm sure. So probably the first song that I remember hearing by them is called The World I Have Known, or The World I Know. And it talks about just, the video has a guy standing up on a building, potentially thinking about suicide. And then, he sees some doves flying and it frightens him, and he realizes that the world is actually a beautiful place. And so So it says, the opening verse is, has our conscience shone, has a sweet breeze blown, has our kindness gone, hope still lingers on, I drink myself a newfound pity, sitting alone in New York City, and I don't know why. And then the chorus, of course, is, so I walk up on high, and I step to the edge, to see my world below, and I laugh at myself, while the tears roll down, 'cause it's the world I know, oh, it's the world I know. And he just kind of repeats that phrase in going into how that this is, again, the hymns, very religious terms, and so the singer is just speaking about how he stepped to the edge of life and has seen what's going on. And one thing that's going to be really important is, one of the lines he says is, have we eyes to see, love is gathering. Love gets to be really big in a lot of songs that people tend to think are religious. We'll see this again probably later on, but you'll see love is kind of this universal thing, like God is love. That's what a lot of people will want to tout. And so just engaging with the person who's listening to it is like, well, what does he mean by that? Well, like, love is gathering. Who's gathering? What is this love? And it's kind of we should all just love one another and put our differences aside. The coexist bumper sticker. Once we boil everything down to it, it's just all about love, right? And what are some of your guys' thoughts on that, as far as everything's bleeding into one, and love being the ultimate call of humanity?
Well, it seems to reflect the name of the group, Collective Soul. So this idea that, all is one, and so, which seems more Buddhist than it does, Christian.
Or New Age.
Yeah. I think as a child of the 80s, you really saw this come out of the 70s, especially in the 80s, and even now into the 20s, is you have this sense of the brotherhood of man, where we're all just this one big, we're all part of the human race, so we just need to love one another. And the New Age movement is starting to do that. I've known some Wiccans and some true pagans in life, and it's all about, well, we value nature, and we're all part of the one big sphere called Earth, and we should just all come together as one people. And it doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. Cool. So our next song is called Run by them. I'm not going in any specific order other than the songs that I like. So interesting.
Well, The World I Know and Run were both really big singles for the band back in the 90s.
Yeah. Collective Soul has had a lot of #1 hits for extended periods of time. They've been around for 2 decades now, I think, or 25 years.
Something like that. The early 90s is when they started, I believe.
Yeah, so 91, 92. So they've been around for a bit now, which is pretty cool. They've got a lot of staying power, and a fairly consistent lineup. But anywho, so Run, interestingly enough, is filmed, or the video and the song is actually featured in a movie. Does anyone remember the movie that this is in? It is I'm gonna let me narrow it down, quote unquote, a teenage coming of age movie. It was in a football.
I can anything.
Yeah. So I think Run.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of football movies, to be honest, or teen coming of age movies.
What? They were all the rage back in the 80s.
If it was in a science fiction movie, I might know it. But,
right. But it was it's actually I think it was in Varsity Blues. And the only reason I really know that is because I saw the video, and the video, they actually have people running in the movie, which is in the video, and there's several different TVs that are showing the movie, which is interesting. So anyway, getting up into the song Run. So it says, "Are these times contagious? I've never been this bored before. Is this the prize I've waited for? Now as the hours passing, there's nothing left here to ensure. I long to find the messenger." And then, of course, the chorus, "I've got a long way to run." The next line, "Is there a cure among us from this processed sanity? I weaken with each voice that sings. Now in this world of purchase, I'm going to buy back memories to awaken some old qualities." And then he just repeats, he's going to be running for a while. So kind of, think Forrest Gump.
As the guitar strums away.
Yes. It's I found lyrics to be really interesting. If you read the lyrics without the music, it's kind of like a lot of worship songs. You're like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense without the sappy music behind it.
Yeah.
So just again, so we go from world I've known in that, he's looking around and seeing that life is beautiful. Life is something that, he should be cherishing. And then in Run, he's talking about, he's running to find himself again. He's wanting to go back into something that makes sense to him. And one could argue that, he's running toward God. Like that is the answer that he is looking for. However, I would argue that not necessarily. Going back to Homo religioso, we were going to worship something. It doesn't necessarily have to mean the Christian God. He could be running toward science. He could be running toward philosophy.
Is this their version of "and I still haven't found what I'm looking for"?
I would think so, yes. I think that's fairly close, yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Rip-offs.
Well, I mean, I really dig the song personally.
Yeah. No, it's one of my favorites. I have a bent toward the melancholy, so a lot of their songs that I like is toward the more melancholic, if that's a word, genre or type. So, but again, just the songwriter, the people singing it, it feels this longing in our heart of, there's got to be more to life than just this. There's got to be more to life than just existing. And we're seeing that now, and with the lockdown and this the social isolation that we're experiencing. A lot of people are having to be forced to be alone with their thoughts. And there's always the encouragement of, hey, reach out to people, because you don't know who's suffering from or who has to deal with a mental issue or challenge that might need to be reached out to during this. And so the distractions are gone, the process sanity, and he's weakening with each voice that sings, in that we kind of lose ourselves in the world out there.
Yeah, I think it's very relatable, and that of course makes for a good song in a lot of ways, because if people can't relate to it, a lot of times it doesn't have kind of any staying power. Mm-hmm. So I think the relatability of it is really powerful in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. Clinton, you got I know, I asked Clinton because he's a Collective Soul fan as well, so he's familiar with some of their songs.
I am. To be honest, I never really, I never really understood much of what they were singing about, because it's kind of, a lot of what they sing about is kind of vague, mm-hmm. Like they don't want to be too obvious about, about their now obviously they did have some obvious ones, like I think one of their first singles was Shine, mm-hmm. Which has the chorus, heaven let your light shine down. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit more overtly religious, but yeah, I always enjoyed Run, even though I always thought that it was just like about because he has lines about what's that?
Is it having a long way to run?
Yeah, having a long way to run. I always kind of thought it was more about like just life in general. Like, he's kind of bored with where he's at. He's mm-hmm. There's just a boredom that he has. Is there a cure for this process sanity? This mm-hmm. kind of things that that he I guess can you throw the words back up here? I was kind of blanking on because there was a point I had to make, but I'm like, oh, the words just like slipped right out through my ears or something. It's all right. So like now as the hours passing, nothing left here to ensure. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit though. Then the second verse: is there a cure among us from this process sanity? So essentially the way that I kind of always interpreted the song, and this may be right, may be wrong. Singers sometimes don't like to have an overt message in their songs, which I think it's kind of lame. But I always kind of figured it was about, like, he was singing about life as it is. Whether it's about him or whether it's about just some imagined person in the song, that the life that he's living, lines about boredom, process sanity, things like that, the things that he's trying to find meaning in don't really bring ultimate meaning. And so he's trying to find something, something more out of life. Is kind of how I always interpreted the song.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a long way to run to attain, that kind of thing. Like Joel was saying, kind of an I still haven't found what I'm looking for kind of thing. And so he still has a long way to go before he can actually find what would bring him ultimate meaning. That's kind of always what I thought the song was about.
Yeah. And I'm curious you bring that up. So yeah, we'll get to, because I actually have a song that talks about that kind of fits in with this. So that'll work out great. So our next one is Precious Declaration. Again, this is from, I forget what, Discipline Breakdown. I think this is what this one's from.
Yeah, I think so.
Is one of their more upbeat songs.
Their openers are usually just straight ahead rockers.
Yeah. So I hitched a ride to a peaceful side of town, then proceeded where thieves were no longer found. Can't crash now, I've been waiting for this. Won't crash now, I found some encouragement. Precious Declaration reads, yours is yours, and mine you leave alone now. Precious Declaration. Yeah, maybe we can play it for us on guitar.
Maybe. I don't play guitar, though. I play piano.
Oh.
I call it love song. It's a love song.
Yes, because I believe all hope is dead no longer. So again, just this declaration of new meanings to words I feed upon, wake within my veins, elements of freedom. Can't break now. I've been living for this. Won't break now. I'm cleansed with hopefulness. That's an interesting phrase. And again, yours is yours and mine you leave alone now. But I think
it has to be a worship song, because he mentions hoops of fire.
Exactly. Yeah, because once I jumped through hoops of fire, high and far as you required, I was blind, but now I see. Salvation has discovered me. So I think it's a breakup song, actually. I think this is
those two lines though kind of always made me suspect that there might be a religious message to this one, or at the very least, he himself grew up religious before I discovered that they were actually the sons of preachers, because they're at least using religious language that they're obviously familiar with.
Yeah, definitely. The whole, and again, this whole salvation has discovered me. We see themes of this throughout a lot of your, not a lot in your pop genre, but in more of your rock genres, and alternative rock will have a lot of overtones that are delved in philosophy. Another one of my bands is Panic at the Disco. And he has some pretty insightful lyrics at times. And so, again, it's just one of those things.
And ridiculous song titles.
What? Ridiculous. Anyway, so, again, I don't know that necessarily he's giving up on religion in this one. Like, again, you could say, one way or the other, high and far as you required, I was blind, but now I see, referring to God, trying to control his life, but I don't see that in this one, particularly with his typical stuff. So, any thoughts on?
Yeah, if you want to, I don't know like what specifically the song is actually about, but you could always maybe interpret it, if you want to interpret it in a way that's religious, as kind of like getting away from fundamentalism, or more like a religion that stifles
Yes.
To find true salvation in again, this might be stretching, but finding true salvation in Christ, as opposed to a legalistic religion that stifles.
Yeah, I agree. I think in Joel's case, it actually fit. Your statement kind of actually goes with what Joel has kind of found in a lot of the deconversion stories that he's been researching. Shout out to Switching Sides on Facebook. You should check that out sometime. But he's found a lot of your extremely conservative, what we refer to as fundamentalism now. In that is the overly restrict rules of, oh no, you drank a soda, how dare you, you're dying and going to hell now. If you slip up and say gosh darn, that's oh well, I don't know.
This is a family show, John.
Oh, my bad. Well then, hey, when we get to the last one, don't show button. Yeah. Hey Kayla, once we get to the last song, don't put all the lyrics up for that one. This is
yes. So you are doing that song that we talked about?
Yeah. I think that would. Okay. That's our end song.
Okay. Is it going to cause somebody to lose their salvation, John?
Yes.
Well, it might take a little bit of explaining. I would submit that it's not actually profane in the way it's been used in this song.
Yes.
But, yeah.
But if anybody listening to the show loses their salvation, please contact us through thementionables.org.
Yeah, I was going to say for more sensitive eyes, and they might not want to read it, but it's not actually profane.
Yeah. But, it's like, John, this is your first and last time on the show because we lost all our listeners because they're now atheists. Congratulations.
Right.
I am a deconversion specialist now. So our next song,
research fodder.
Yep.
Send all deconversion stories to Joel Furchess, care of the Mentionables, and he will gladly interview you. He has all the time in the world now. So our next song, yes. So interestingly enough, our next song is going to be Crown, because Clinton, you had mentioned talking about leaving belief. I think we did that in Run, or going to stuff. So in Crown, this is, again, one of the more slow, thoughtful song type stuff. And so it starts out with the very interesting line of, who's going to be my savior? Now that I've learned to believe, who's going to be the answer to all of my questioning? Well, I hope I'm not lost, but I think that hope is now distracting. I think it's distancing, actually.
Distancing, I think, is the word.
Some of these lyrics are
yeah. Oh, trust me, I've gotten a lot of those. And the words that secure a thought are now faint whisperings. So it's interesting because he goes back to, Run and World I Have Known about, hey, I've got the hope now. I've figured everything out. But now he's thinking and kind of more introspective of his belief structure.
Yeah, John, have you by any chance listened to their live album called Home?
I have not.
Oh, that's a fantastic album. It's one of my favorite live albums I've ever heard. They play with the Atlanta Youth Symphony Orchestra.
I heard that on that interview that we watched.
Yeah, right. And Crown is one of the songs they do. It's a very, very nice arrangement with the orchestra.
Oh, I bet. I'll have to check that out when we get done.
Yeah.
And then, so your chorus is, who's going to wear my crown? I don't know. I just might alone. And then, who's going to be my partner now that I stand here alone? Who's going to be the shepherd to lead this poor boy back home? Well, I hope I'm not lost, but I think that hope is now distancing. The words that secure a thought are now faint whisperings. So again, just going back to, again, I don't know any artist that says, oh, well, this is what I was thinking exactly when I wrote this song. But,
right.
It's kind of like a painting. It's like, well, what do you see in it? Like a bear?
Yeah. And usually when an artist like tells you, oh, this song was about da da da. It's so much more disappointing.
Yes.
It was about their cat running away or something.
Right, yeah.
In some song you found deep meaning in.
Oh, yes. So a classic example of that is totally not related. Is "Every Step You Take" by Sting, which is sung at countless weddings, and it's no, actually, that's about a stalker. He's or there's another one.
Is that confirmed or just because it sounds like a stalker?
I think he's actually said that on a couple of interviews before. He's like, "Thanks, but that's not what that song's about." So anyway, going back to Collective Soul, again, just their talk about hope and where it's going to find it. Again, what I find most striking is the term shepherd. Who's going to be the shepherd to lead this poor boy back home? Again, just as Christ is our shepherd and the one to guide us through everything. And so again, kind of going along with Run, he's searching for something, and again in Crown, he's kind of found it, but not really. So,
yeah,
any
and
thoughts
actually,
on that?
Yeah, just as an aside, Crown actually has a hidden track with a song called "She Said," which actually became one of their more popular songs, and it was a hidden track on this
Yes.
CD. Yeah, because it was originally written for the CD, but it eventually got bumped off because they wrote a different song, which they
World
stuck
I
on
Have
the CD.
Known.
And they ended up, and it ended up becoming a hidden track on the CD. So
yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting song.
Yeah.
Part of the lyrics, he's talking. The way it reads is it's a guy writing about his girlfriend, or his wife, or some significant woman in his life, and she talks about the
girl
cool thing
he's
is
stalking, right?
Yeah, no. She says that only the strong will survive, and then she says, but I'm feeling kind of weak right now. And so just that dichotomy of their thoughts of, hey, I'm a strong person, only the strong will survive, but I'm actually feeling kind of weak right now. So self-admitting to frailty and stuff like that. So I love the song. You just got to wait like 3 minutes to get to it on the old CDs. All right. So forgiveness, because it's all about forgiveness, right? That's what Christianity is about, love and forgiveness, right? Again, right. Nice. So forgiveness again.
I've been on so many teleconferences recently that I've just created that.
Some of the memes are great with that. So forgiveness again. In my silence, I would love to forget, but restitution hasn't come quite yet. And with one accord, I keep pushing forth. I stretch my heart to heal some more. It used to be all I'd want to learn was wisdom, trust, and truth. But now all I really want to learn is forgiveness for you. So again, he's just talking about, I would assume a bad relationship, and he's just trying to work through the hurt in his heart. As my seasons change, I've now grown to know when hearts creates, when soul doesn't owe or own. So I wash away stains of yesterday, then tempt my heart with love's display. So again, just trying to move on in his life. But there's another song from the 80s, and I forget who the artist is, but he mentions forgiveness again, and it's he's been trying to get to the heart of the matter. Don Henley or the other guy from the Eagles. Anyway.
Yeah,
heart of the matter. Anyway, he talks about it being moving on and forgiving, right, even if you don't love me anymore.
Even if. Yeah, I think that was Don Henley.
Yeah. So again, just the importance of, just as Christ has forgiven us, so we must forgive others. Again, I don't know that this is where Ed's coming from, but as a believer and as someone when we're trying to talk to people, this might be an entryway into that of, how do you deal with the unforgiveness in your heart for whatever has happened, and working through that, because it can lead to the bitterness and resentment that builds up in one's life, even in a believer. Holding on to that anger and stuff is kind of a bad thing. Any thoughts?
I wonder how much of this is just the kind of Christian vocabulary from their upbringing sort of creeping into the songs, whether or not they had an actual spiritual message.
Yeah.
I noticed this with one of the Katy Perry songs. So she grew up Christian, and then probably isn't so much anymore. But in one of her songs, she like slips in this, if I don't stand for something, I'll fall for anything, which is this really sort of classic cheesy, pastor line that they'll throw out for things. And clearly she pulled that from her Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
And like nothing else from her inner songs from that. But at any rate, my point is your vocabulary tends to slip into your songs.
Again, I think the key is, again, leaning toward just more classical stuff, and that man being homo religiosos. Again, Paul says there's no one that seeks after God, no one. He was quoting David in that from the Psalms, and so we want to think that people are talking about that. It's like, okay, but rap stars thank God when they get up and accept their rewards, and you just talked about gunning someone down and slinging dope and all the women that you've conquered, and so I think
well put.
I can keep it PG. I can.
Right.
But no, I think that's the challenge is we want to attribute. Oh well, you Google Collective Soul on YouTube. Look up some of the people, and people will get into arguments over Collective Soul being a Christian band. Another one was Vertical Horizon.
Yeah, they have a song called "You're a God," so
yes,
I kind of lean toward not.
Yeah, and then YouTube. Oh my gosh, anyone that's in their 30s to 40s remembers YouTube being this wonderful Christian band, and Bono's like, not so much. And
Right.
So we want to.
What about Deep Blue Something?
Deep Blue Something, definitely.
Yeah, I've only ever heard Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, they were I think they were a one-hit wonder, unfortunately.
I think so too.
But
right now, I'm just throwing out 90s bands names.
Oh, okay.
Soul Asylum.
Like
Creed. Oh my gosh.
Creed.
Yes. Again.
Yeah, Creed. I believe what Scott Stapp is the guy's name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he is legitimately a believer. Yeah, I mean, they had that song. What is it? My Own Prison.
Yes.
Which is a pretty overt evangelistic song.
Definitely, and again, I don't know these individuals on a personal basis, so I cannot attest to their faith.
Whoa! Get off the show then.
I mean, I can assume anything. I'm going to go with no one's religious, but that's okay. Well, I think they're all religious. They just don't want to be faithful to Christ, but that's my theological bent. All right, so our next one is one of their more recent ones, and it's called "Right as Rain," which is an interesting song. And it's so this song and the next one are good for compare contrast. And so Right as Rain, he's got a cross to bear. It's this Jesus piece that he wears, but he doesn't know if it makes him whole. And he's got success in his veins. A lover knows my name, but I don't. No, I don't know if it makes me whole. And we just repeat that a couple times. All my days might crash like a runaway train. There's a good song for you, Joel. Yeah, so I got across
my life is a train wreck. Is that what you were trying to say?
No, who's the band that sings it, Joel? You should know this. Remember the time that you had like in college when we were in college?
Sings what song?
Runaway Train?
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Soul Asylum.
Yeah. I've actually sang that song for karaoke.
It's a good song.
It is.
So again, he's got success in his veins. A lover knows his name, but he doesn't know if it makes him whole. All my days move like a crazed runaway train. Still I pray that tomorrow will be right as rain. So again, this, make up your mind. You either have hope or you don't have hope in his songs. I'm totally confused, but he's had 20 years to figure it out. So we'll go. I got some faith. I concede. Just a curse of memories, but I don't know if that makes my whole. So again, he's just talking about, all these what we would call artifacts or symbols of faith or wealth, of prosperity. What's really going to give him peace? What's really going to make him whole as a person? And we can talk about that. In that, Augustine said, our souls are restless, God, until we find you, or something like that. I forget the exact quote. But again, going back,
until they find their rest in God.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. And so this would be similar to that in the aspect of, well, hey, what's it going to take for you to do it? Is it just going to be more conquests of either women or money or businesses? What's it going to take for you to find peace or to make you feel as a whole individual? And again, our faith in Christ lends us to that. It gives us this hope. It gives us this peace in life that we can afford.
Let me interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
Whoever's got the dog barking in the background, why don't you mute your mic until you want to speak?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was me. I've got the window open, and that's coming from outside. So I'm gonna go close the window. I'll be right back.
All right. Dogs barking can't fly without umbrellas. For a nice little reference for anyone that wants to go look that up. Jumping Jack Flash. It's a Whoopi Goldberg movie. Anyway, sorry, I make a lot of weird connections. Anyway, so again, going back to some faith. I can see just a curse of memories. So yeah, I think that's pretty much that. Any thoughts, or should we wait till Clinton gets back on that? All right. Sorry.
I think it's interesting. It seems to be that there's certainly something about superficial religiosity here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that well, I guess the song in general is about superficial things that aren't fulfilling. So I think there's certainly, Christians can relate to that as well as, anyone else. Just because there are so many superficial things that don't make people whole, it seems that the gospel is sort of hinted at here, but not necessarily in a fulfilling sense. It's a Jesus piece I wear. And then again, in Got Some Faith, I can see just a curse of memories. So I think there are hints of it there, but again, this still seems to be some searching if I were to take it at face value.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like more I still haven't found what I'm looking for type things.
Yeah, and again, I think the debates in YouTube are that every band's a Christian band, pretty much, and so again,
what
because
YouTube
of their
channels are you listening to?
You'd be surprised. Post rock mostly. But again, we're just finishing up with Right as Rain. Clinton, do you have any thoughts on that one? Yeah, your mic's muted.
Thanks for that. I was just hoping everyone would be able to read my lips, especially the ones listening audio only.
You should have let him go for a while, John, before he told it.
My bad. I didn't know. I forgot that was initiation.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. Not really, because I don't really have any additional thoughts, because this is actually a song that I have not heard.
Okay.
Kind of lost track with Collective Soul a little bit after their 2009 self-titled album.
Okay.
So this next one I do know, because we talked about it and I listened to it on YouTube.
Yes.
Right as Rain I haven't heard.
Okay, that's cool. So again, just right as rain. He's got faith. He's working toward something. Again, world I've known, precious declaration. So parental warning on observation of thought. It does use the Lord's name in vain. So we will edit that out in the YouTube, I assume. And he was last year.
We're live, right, John?
Yes. Yeah, but you can not show that line, I'm sure. We'll figure something out. Anyway,
it might actually be the first two lines.
Yeah.
Depending on if they put it in the same line or if they put it on two separate lines.
2 lines. I just looked it up. So,
okay.
He was at a little studio. Him and the other rhythm guitarist, Ed was, and he's talking about. He had just wrote this song called "Observation of Thought," and he was talking about his wife. Her side of the family was having some health issues, and this is where we find out that she's Jewish. And he said that he wrote it, because he saw her distress and kind of her doubting of everything going on, and so he wanted to kind of put that in a lyric or write a song that kind of expresses this doubt and frustration that one experiences at, I would assume, the hopelessness of an illness, and just lack of control in life. Clinton, we've had some conversations about this. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I thought it was a good song. Christianity certainly doesn't discourage people from doubting and from questioning their faith. So yeah, I thought it was a very emotionally impactful song.
Cool. So we'll go ahead and talk about it. So he starts out with using God's name in vain for this moment and for what lies ahead. I'm just a sinner reaching for his Savior's hand. I feel like a useless joke in some comedy. I feel like a promise broken for eternity. So lay it on down, lay it on down, lay it all on me. Yeah, lay it on down, lay it on down, lay it on a man in need. Again, in this moment and what's yet to be, he's just a question whose answers seem to plead. Again, I feel like a soldier waiting for the bullets burn. I feel like a wise man who knows he wasn't blessed to learn. And then he just repeats, lay it on down. And then the last phrase is, again, asking for God's judgment on this moment and God's judgment for what tomorrow brings. So again, he's questioning the validity of faith, and he's expressing his doubts toward, I would assume, the helplessness that he's feeling right now. You guys' thoughts on that?
It sounds like they're kind of running through the same sort of sense, all the songs.
Well, can you elaborate on that?
Sure, there seems to be like this kind of longing and sense of searching for some kind of deeper meaning or fulfillment in all of the songs that you've put out so far.
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to everyone, since man can start thinking and thinking critically, we've wanted to find meaning and purpose in life. Even, The Plague by Albert Camus, where the city gets locked down and people get in their cars and drive around in circles for a long time, or go to the same movies because there's nothing left to do. That existential angst that everybody feels.
That's kind of a sensitive topic right now, John.
Well, can we talk about the metamorphosis instead? I mean, again, it's this existential crisis that people feel, and wanting to find purpose in that. Even atheists try to find meaning behind what's going on. They choose to go other ways about it, and not focus on God as the end. But as those of you who have encountered atheists, I would assume that that's par for the course. Again, I don't have that much interaction with those, so I'll leave it to your guys' discretion on that.
Oh, I see Caleb has blurred out
redacted.
That's impressive, Caleb.
Caleb has some mad
that took
word
a little
skills.
work.
But you did it quickly.
So again, just on this moment, asking for God's judgment on this moment and what lies ahead. And in the end, he says, just in this moment and for tomorrow. He feels like a useless joke in some comedy. Again, if his wife, he said he saw his wife going to bed crying and waking up crying. And so a lot of this has to do with that. Clinton, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You can definitely, you can definitely tell what he's thinking here. Because when he talked about it in that recording, talked about how his wife, was really struggling going through these, and how he wants to take that burden on himself. And I think that's something that we can all relate to when we see someone that we care about kind of struggling with some things. We want them to lay it on us, let us take the burden. And if we want to interpret that religiously, that wasn't the purpose of the song, but of course that's the way that Christ is to us. That he takes our burdens. His burden is easy and his yoke is light, or reverse that. And so in this case we can kind of see that that Ed here is kind of being what's the term, like kind of God's avatar, I guess you could say. In that in the same way that God takes our burdens on him, he is actually, whether or not he's very serious about being a Christian, or if he's just kind of kind of a believer but doesn't really take the faith seriously, anything like that, he's still doing the thing that a husband is supposed to do for his wife, and wanting to ease her burdens, take it on him, and help her through it. And so I think that really comes through in the song.
Yeah. Cool.
This song reminded me a lot of a prayer by King's Kaleidoscope. In terms of, and I think it's a little bit different here. I'm not even sure in the context of which it's given exactly how I would view this profanity. Especially when you listen to it sung. And I feel the same way about King's Kaleidoscope song. And
another one you're talking about.
Notoriously, they use the F word in it. But it's probably one of the most heartfelt prayers of anger and pain I've ever heard. And when I listened to this song, I felt myself kind of seeing it in very much the same light. So is it questionable? Yes. But it's also very real in a sense.
Yeah. And he does. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Again, it's because this is sort of the Waller in which I roll, but I see a lot of these kinds of desperate prayers and poems and so forth being written down, in the process of deconversion for these, one that comes to dark web. If you look at his songs, they kind of progress in this direction. where it's just sort of more and more desperate towards God. Why can't I X, Y, Z?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of during these deconversion accounts, they'll drag out their prayer journals from when they were in the process of losing their faith, and you see language that's very similar to this, especially the profanity starting to creep in. For whatever reason, that's just kind of there's sort of a progressive role of to the point where when they're actually sitting there giving their deconversion testimony, they can't keep themselves from being profane a lot.
So would you think that's coming from a sense of rebellion then?
Well, I know that I know that in the cases of these deconverts, when they start to use profanity, it's because they are now free to do so. Before the thing they repressed, and it was kind of a no that you weren't allowed to do. And now that they're no longer subject to those rules, they can do it. Therefore, they do it. It's kind of this feeling of freedom and letting go.
Cool. All right. Well, that is my half. Didn't you have a song, Joel?
All right. Yeah, I want to mention one song that's always struck me as a secular song that really had some very theological implications, if you will.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll run it by you. It's an oldie but a goodie at this point. It's by Cage the Elephant, and it's "Ain't No Rest for the Wicked." I'm sure all of you are familiar with the song.
Yes.
Yeah. So I like the song because it implicitly it kind of rolls. It confirms this idea of sin nature, right? We all have this sin nature that is inherent and something we can't escape from. So I mean, it's a song in 3 verses. And the first verse, and it's kind of like progressing through this guy's day. And so the first thing that happens to him during the day is that a prostitute approaches him, and so
as they are wont to do.
Yeah. Oldest profession and whatnot, all the cliches. Anyway, so I mean, his response to the prostitute is, why would you want to do this to yourself? And he invokes a sort of human dignity to her. Instead of seeing her as a prostitute, he sees her as a person, if you will, and he says that you seem like a nice person. Why would you want to do this? And so then it rolls into the chorus that there are bills to be paid, and and then
in this life for free.
Yeah, and there ain't no rest for the wicked. And then so that progresses on, and next thing that happens to him is he gets mugged. And so he's talking. The mugger is asking for money, and he says, "Yeah, sure, but why do you want to pay?" And the mugger, does the same thing. I got bills to pay, and there ain't no rest for the wicked. And then the final verse, he's at home watching TV, and he sees the scandal where a preacher was caught stealing the money from the church, and so he's shocked to see this. And then it's interesting because in this verse he can't talk to the preacher, right? So he's sitting there with his own thoughts, and he realizes that we're all like this. Every one of us has this kind of factor that the way he puts it is we all seek out to satisfy those thrills, and then he applies the same thing to himself. There's no rest for the wicked. And so I mean, it's interesting because in the 3 stages I feel like he covers kind of the 3 angles of sin. You've got this sort of the sexual sin, you've got the theft and murder, and everything that's implied in the mugging, and then finally you've got this sort of religious sin. People are being victimized by that. Yes, Caleb.
I've heard this song several times on the radio because they play it on our modern rock station, but I never really looked at the words. I'm looking at this 3rd verse, and I'm like, and I'm thinking, that's actually a pretty healthy attitude, that he can't really say much to condemn this preacher because at heart, we're all the same. Mm-hmm. And he has his own things that he struggles with that others might look at him and think is, really bad, and wondering why he does those things. So I think that's kind of a healthy attitude to take about this preacher.
Yeah, and he generalizes that to everyone. He says, we all seek out to satisfy, and then he rolls into the chorus again, but now he's applying it to everyone. Mm-hmm. This is something that we cannot escape. And so he doesn't take their step of, saying that we need a savior, or there's something, he implies the need. Mm-hmm. It's very insightful as to this sort of sin nature, that we have these things that we are not ourselves able to overcome, and therefore this is kind of the situation in which we find ourselves. But, it's a mature attitude. It's something that, he's identified that we agree with, I would assume, is that, there ain't wicked and we're all the wicked. Mm-hmm. And he applies that to everyone there. It's interesting because I stumbled across an article that was published for atheists. I suppose it was kind of like a conversation board or whatever. And they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're talking about like music that influenced them during their deconversion and so forth. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the ones that they cited specifically because of the verse of the preacher stealing money from, which just sort of points out like how, religious people are all hypocrites or whatnot.
Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking that as I was talking about his healthy attitude. So I'm thinking, a lot of times, an atheist would, of course, see something like that and say, "Oh, look at those Christians. They're just hypocrites because they do evil things too." But instead of doing that, he says, "Well, no, deep down we're all like this, so I can't really condemn him, without condemning myself, essentially."
Right, and that verse actually as a Christian, because I'm very glad that he put that verse in, because it speaks to the fact that you can't elevate the individuals in the church or the church itself, because the church itself are fallen individuals, under the authority of God. Mm-hmm. And so, this also strikes me as one of the things I see people kind of miss about Jesus' ministry is that the of Jesus' ministry was the corruption of the religious system around him, and most of his parables, end up targeting the religious system. So, for instance, you think of the Good Samaritan parable, right? So the main character is the Samaritan. No, the character that it's focusing on are the Levite and the priest, or not priest, the other person, the righteous men that passed this beat up guy by on the other side of the road, and this is the people he was talking to. He's like, you're like this people, not the Samaritan. And the same thing was true of the prodigal son. Everybody thinks the prodigal son is the focus character. The focus character was actually the big brother who was complaining about, his little brother being accepted back. That's who he was talking to. So the corruption of religion is very central to the New Testament. And we hypocrites if we were to overlook the corruption of religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jesus' harshest words in the New Testament, I think, were always toward the religious Pharisees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my basic thoughts for that song. I like the song because it speaks to me of this doctrine of, the sin nature and our need for Savior. Take that further step, but it's implied.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Well, because we're on the topic of music. And do any of you guys listen to the band Kansas?
Not in a long time, no.
Okay, because Kansas.
I know, like, there are 3 songs. They only have 3, right?
The same 3 that everyone knows who's not a fan. Carry On Wayward Son, Dust in the Wind, Point in No Return, right? Yeah, those are the 3 songs everyone knows unless they're a fan. And it drives me bonkers because they have so many great songs.
Sure they do.
Yeah, Kansas has been around since the early 70s. Now, obviously, I have not been around since the early 70s. My experience, I was born in 1981, and my first experience with Kansas was actually in high school. We played Carry On Wayward Son as a pep band tune during marching band season. And then sometime later, during my, I don't know, sophomore, junior year, I actually heard the song on the radio, and I'm like, oh, that's the song we play for pep band. And it turned out to be a really, really good rock song, because I was just starting to get into later versions of classic rock, because my mom raised me on the rock and roll of like the 50s and 60s. And so I was just starting to get into later rock. Plus, I also listened to like the modern 90s alternative. But yeah, so I heard that song, got really into them, started listening to all of their albums. And yeah, and the thing about Kansas is, they were, back in the 70s, they were a band that was very heavy on searching for the answers of life. They wrote a number of different songs about different religious worldviews. Like they wrote a song called In Commudro, Hymn to the Atman, which I'm sure those of you who've studied other religions know what Atman is. I'm not too familiar with it. I think it's like a Hindu term, right? But yeah,
not one I'm real familiar with.
Yeah, so they had a lot of these searching songs, and the song "Carry On, Wayward Son." Everyone thinks it's about the prodigal son, because it sounds like that, but it wasn't. That was long before Kerry Livgren became a Christian. Kerry Livgren being one of the main songwriters. And so when I think of songs with apologetic content, I tend to think of Kansas, because you had Kerry Livgren, who was the primary songwriter. Some of the other guys would write too, but Kerry Livgren was one of the main ones. He wrote "Dust in the Wind" and some of their biggest hits. And he was constantly searching.
All three of them.
Well, right. Yeah, all three of them. I don't remember specifically who wrote the others. I think it was probably Livgren. Steve Walsh might have had a hand in them. But yeah, and so he was always searching. And then after their album Monolith, which was released in like 1979, 1980, Kerry Livgren became a Christian. Mm-hmm. And he also helped lead their bassist Dave Hope to the Lord. And Steve Walsh ended up leaving the band because Kerry Livgren, being a Christian, started writing more and more lyrics that resembled Christianity. Steve Walsh wasn't comfortable with that, so he left the band, and they ended up bringing in John Elefante. And so so I always think of Kansas as a kind of a band with apologetic content, because Kerry Livgren was searching, and he ended up finding the Lord in his searching, and a lot of his lyrics kind of reflect that as well.
Interesting side note on that song.
On Carry On, or
yes, actually, there was a all-female Christian rock band called Rachel did a cover of it back in the 90s. So I saw the video back on, we had a music channel called Z Music, and they played Christian music videos, and that was one of the ones I saw.
How was that?
Exactly like something you would listen to, John.
How was their rendition of it?
It was good. I think they actually probably had what's his face on there, Carrie on there. I don't remember the video offhand, but he probably made a guest star appearance on it.
Okay, yeah. Stryper actually released an album of covers called The Covering earlier this decade, and Carry On Wayward Son was one of the songs they covered. They did really good with it too.
Wait, hold on. You said earlier this decade. You realize this is the first year of this decade, right?
Earlier in the 2010s. Sorry.
Stryper? I'm sorry. Stryper?
Stryper, yeah.
You listen to Stryper?
I listen to Stryper, yeah. I have some of their classic albums from the 80s, and I have some of their newer albums after they got back together.
Is Stryper considered classic?
Yeah, as far as I know. Yellow and Black Attack. Hell with the Devil. In fact, Michael Sweet, the singer for Stryper, man, that guy can still hit those high notes, man. He's an amazing singer, even after all these years. He's, man.
What you're not seeing now is my smirk, because Stryper?
Yeah, I can't see your smirk because you don't have a camera.
It's Stryper?
Yeah, Stryper. What's so hard to believe that I would listen to Stryper?
Let me describe his smirk for you so you understand what you should be seeing now. You remember that point in When the Grinch Stole Christmas where his mouth curls up to the point where it takes up, most of the screen and his face, his head? That's John's smirk.
Yeah, we should go on to say that I've known Joel for the better part of 2 decades now.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. Clinton has wonderful taste in music because he listens to Stryper.
Okay. Oh, so you like Stryper? Okay, yeah. Okay, making sure I understand that. Okay, good. I do listen to Stryper.
I will pray
The
for your
real
soul.
question here is, do you listen to Apologetics?
I do listen to Apologetics. I've actually exchanged emails with Jay Jackson from Apologetics. So yeah, because he actually
Get them to play our next conference.
Yeah, I mean, if we could afford the $8,000 or $9,000 it costs to book them, then I'm sure they'd come play. Because I've actually looked into how to book them before. But yeah, they wrote a pro-life parody several years ago, and I ordered their CD through the mail and sent them an email and said, "Hey, I love the song. I'm a pro-life apologist. Really love the lyrics of that song." And we exchanged emails a little bit.
On an unrelated note, check out our Patreon account and sign up to be a patron.
Yeah, if you like apologetics too, maybe you can donate to the Bring Apologetics to a Mentionables conference fund.
Yes.
You heard it here, folks.
We'll get Clinton to do a cover of a Stryper song.
Oh, I cannot sing Stryper. I'll just tell you that right now. I cannot sing Stryper.
You don't know till you try.
Up to you, John.
Yeah, I'm done. I got me. That was my topics. I got no other song. Well, I got plenty of songs, but I'll save that for another time.
Yeah, I brought up Kansas because it is getting kind of late. I don't know how much longer we're going to be doing this. I was thinking maybe save the movies for next time. Or
I was actually thinking the same thing. If we talk a little bit more about music, we'll completely save that for the next go round.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because actually it's been a while since I've seen Gattaca, so I wanted to refresh myself on the synopsis before talking about it. But it's a good movie.
Yeah, I watched it for the first time this week, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so hold that thought. We'll talk about it next time.
Yeah, the other movie people will want to watch for next time is Frailty.
Oh, that's a good one.
Going back to a couple of 90s movies that...
Actually, I had Jurassic Park as one of mine, too. I'd like to talk about that one if we could also.
Yeah, let's throw that one in there, too. And we'll aim for all of those next time. You got any you're going to
add? Finds a way.
Life finds a way. Yeah,
yes, the first Jurassic Park, the good one.
Yeah, right, the good one. Yeah.
So, to kind of pull this conversation on music back together a little bit and wrap it up, I think the way we've had this conversation tonight is really important, because I think it gives an example for people, for one, that music does not just have to be catchy lyrics and one-off lines and songs you hear on the radio and then forget about. You can actually have conversations over music. Having discussions about lyrics like this or songs that mean something to you actually can open the door for conversations that you don't know where they're going to go theologically, or just in bringing up the topic of religion, period. I mean, I'm sure many of the people who enjoy Collective Soul have no idea of any of the religious significance of some of the words they've used or some of the meaning behind it, because a lot of people don't dig into artist backgrounds or even deep into lyrics like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. There are some songs that you just listen to, but I think also for some of the songs, listening for the deeper meaning and then being able to use that as a means of opening up to talk about the gospel, not only necessarily defense of the faith, but just sharing your faith in general. Again, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Well, what's he looking for? That's kind of, our angst in life is I'm put here, but I don't know why. What's going on? And so
I think he wrote that song after trying to find his car at the mall.
Yeah, Christmas Day, I think it was.
Right.
Black Friday.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's some good points there of just looking to see what's going on in the words of a song and trying to think about it. It might help you to help someone else talk about the song.
Yeah, and before we can wrap up this conversation, I wanna throw out one more out there, because we've talked Collective Soul, we've talked Cage the Elephant, we've talked Kansas. I don't think any kind of apologetics broadcast on the subject of music, particularly secular music, would be complete without talking about, drumroll please, Bad Religion.
Oh.
So are any of you familiar with Bad Religion?
Yeah, I've heard a few of their songs.
Yeah.
Are they the one that did Bad Company? Till I Die?
No. So
Bad Company was sung by the band Bad Company on their original album, Bad Company.
Yeah, exactly.
It's self-referencing.
Right.
So one of my favorite songs of theirs is this track, American Jesus, because I think it's brilliant songwriting, and I think Christians can relate to it very much, particularly if you look at deconversions and stuff the way Joel has. So I'm going to throw the lyrics up here, and I want to get some thoughts. Are any of you familiar with this song before we kind of go in?
No.
I don't think so. I've probably heard it, but I don't really know offhand.
Good, because I would like some off the cuff thoughts. So it starts, I don't need to be a global citizen because I'm blessed by nationality. I'm a member of a growing populace. We enforce our popularity. There are things that seem to pull us under, and there are things that drag us down. But there's a power and a vital presence that's lurking all around. We've got the American Jesus. See him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus. He helped build the president's estate. I feel sorry for the Earth's population because so few live in the USA. At least the foreigners can copy our morality. They can visit, but they cannot stay. Only precious few can garner the prosperity. It makes us walk with renewed confidence. We've got a place to go when we die, and the architect resides right here. We've got the American Jesus, bolstering national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. So that's kind of the crux of the song, and then it intertwines some various lines along with In God We Trust, and it goes through, talks about he's the farmer's barren fields, the force the army wields, the expression on the faces of the starving millions. The power of the man, he's the fuel that drives the clan. He's the motivation and conscience of the murderer. Preacher on TV, the false sincerity, the form letter that's written by the big computers. Nuclear bombs, the kids with no moms, and I'm fearful that he's inside me. Any thoughts offhand?
So
that is Bad Religion.
It seems to be a song, like an anti-nationalism song about people who kind of confuse nationalism with Christianity.
Yeah, that's always been my interpretation of it as well. I think it probably takes a few subtle jabs at Christianity along the way.
Yes.
But given how I think America has twisted Christianity, at least a lot of powerful people have twisted it for their own means. I find this song really interesting.
Yeah, similar to atheists who tend to attack some view of God that they have in their head that is foreign to me. They're attacking a version of Christianity that I don't hold to.
Right, exactly.
Now, I don't know if that means that they don't believe, any religion is true. Like maybe they don't believe Christianity, or Christianity as a religion is false. But at the very least, this version of Christianity is not the one that I call mine.
Yeah, and I've actually done more research into the background of this band a little bit. Greg Graffin, who's the lead singer and who writes pretty much all their songs, he's a pretty staunch atheist and is a professor in evolutionary biology at I can't remember. It's one of the fairly big schools. So he's always very forthcoming about his atheism. But interestingly enough, he doesn't seem to know much about actual Christian theology and beliefs. I don't think he was raised religious, at least not heavily. And there's a great book that is one of the rare finds I have gotten before. I'm trying to look it back up now, where he actually had conversation back and forth via email between him and I believe it was another professor, and it was on the discussing the topic of religion. And it's a really good and different book because it's a conversation back and forth between two people and very genuine. I'll find that, but any other thoughts?
I think.
Well,
oh, go ahead, Joel.
We've discussed this before, Caleb. It's always irritating to me how Christianity is kind of conflated with the political right to the point where, you know, and I hear this in all the deconversion interviews that I listen to, is it always becomes a political discussion, you know, to an extent. You almost feel as if they lost their religion because they disagreed with the politics, right? You know, and so
what happened to one mutual atheist friend of ours?
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, I mean, I made this comment on my Switching Sides feed that it's rare that I hear one of these interviews that doesn't devolve into a Trump bashing session.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge that we face is, you know, the whole America's founded on Christian values and stuff. It's like America's not a theocracy, so it doesn't really work. And so, but yeah, I totally agree with the whole, we've enmeshed politics and religion to the point of where if you're a Republican, you're a Christian, and if you're a Christian, you can't be anything but a Republican, you know. And
it's like if you introduce yourself as a Christian to somebody, they're like, I can't believe you support President Trump. I just said I was a Christian. Right. A Trump supporter.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sad state. And I think the song speaks to that. We've got the American Jesus bolstering national faith. You know, again, where Jesus is international. You know, he's not just the American God, and we have a tendency to see that. And so I could totally see the song making sense. I mean, it's a sad but true statement, I think would be a good way to say it.
I think that's a very, very good summation of exactly why this song resonates with me, and why it's been one that I go back to, and it has meaning for that reason. I can relate to it, and more so, I can relate to people who've gotten caught up in that idea of Christianity versus the one I've come to grow and love.
Yeah, well, his opening line, I don't need to be a global citizen because I'm blessed by nationality. So equating my nationality, i.e. Christian or e.g. Christian, and being an American. So therefore, they're one and the same. They're synonymous. There's no difference between the two.
Yep.
You can't be a good Christian if you're not an American, and you can't be a good American if you're not a Christian.
It reminds me
Obviously.
of some Green Day songs, honestly.
Yeah. American Idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and Jesus of Suburbia and whatever the one that says I don't want to be part of the moral majority.
Oh yeah. Actually, I think that one's called. I think it was called Majority, isn't it? Or Minority.
Probably. Yeah.
Minority is what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. All on the same album, I think.
Probably.
American Idiot album.
Yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, I'll throw this up as well. So there's the book I have mentioned was Is Belief in God Good, Bad, or Irrelevant? A professor and a punk rocker discuss science, religion, and naturalism.
Oh, that sounds good.
And it was actually Preston Jones who co-wrote the book with him.
I don't know him, so.
Are
you familiar with him, Clinton?
I am not.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't real familiar at the time, and then I saw his name pop up in a few other things, and I've forgotten where it was. But it is a good read for anybody who wants something very different. Anywho.
Oh, cool.
So that takes us off on another tangent. But to pull this thing back around, again, I think the goal tonight here was really to show that the kind of conversations that can come out of discussion of music, the kind of thought processes even that can come out of expanding musical horizons and listening for what worldviews influence songs as well as people. So I think that's where the value lies in these kind of conversations. And I think it's why it's important that Christians do talk about things that come up in secular media. And I think it's why we need to be able to relate and show points from things that connect with people. We're building bridges. And if we're going to build bridges, it doesn't mean we have to inundate ourselves with every piece of secular media. But if we can have good conversations based on that, then I think we're on our way to at least putting some foundations down.
If I could jump in for a moment.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've got 4 people on the show right now that I assume all consider themselves relatively strong Christians, right? And
yes.
We've been discussing, punk rock songs and, classic rock songs and, pop songs and, what songs that have bad language in them and so forth. And we all listen to that, right? So
yeah.
Here we have Christians who listen to non-Christian music and get messages out of them and appreciate it, right? And so this is something that we've discussed a couple of times in the show, is this sort of isolationist mentality that Christianity tends to have sometimes, that we need to avoid all the things of the world, that we probably will end up getting corrupted and so forth. And this is, of course, one of the main factors I've seen in conversion narratives, is that they kind of isolate the person off from the secular world to the degree that they just they're not prepared to go out in the world and see all of the things that the world has to offer and views that it offers and so forth. And my point in saying all of this is, it's okay to have exposure to the secular world. It's okay to listen to music that isn't Christian music, and we've exercised certain discernment, extract certain messages that we believe comport with the truth, being the Christian worldview. And it's okay. We've managed to approach this, quote, secular material and still maintain our own integrity. It is possible to do.
Yeah. The way that I look at it is, because especially because I've taken an interest in bioethics. So when I watch a movie, I watched Jurassic Park when I was a teenager. Back then, I didn't know anything about philosophy or apologetics. I just liked the movie because it was a realistic depiction of dinosaurs. Now that I'm more knowledgeable in philosophy, apologetics, and especially bioethics, I appreciate yeah, I appreciate Jurassic Park even at a deeper level because of the bioethic discussions and philosophical discussion about ethics and bioethics that they had in the movie. And so when I watch a non-religious movie, even one that has swearing, maybe a sex scene, I don't watch anything too graphic. Like I don't watch like slasher films or anything like that because those aren't to make a point or to tell a good story. Those are just to watch violence essentially. But I do like to watch movies like Jurassic Park, Gattaca, these movies who are not made by Christians but are made by people who feel like they have something to say. And so when I watch a film like this, I view it as really no different than me going and picking up A Defense of Abortion by David Boonin or The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. I can't always guarantee those contain all clean language, and they obviously have views in them that I disagree with. But I watch these films because, number one, I'm interested in the topics. Number two, a good filmmaker and a good writer will at least give me something to think about while I'm watching these movies. Even if I ultimately disagree with them, they're still giving me they're still helping me, giving me something to think about. And they're also kind of giving a visual depiction of what some of these things could be like. And so I think that there's value in them, even if I don't agree with them, even if they contain some questionable or even objectionable content. I think that there can still be good reasons to watch them, and I can still get stuff out of them as long as I keep filtering them through the lens of my Christian worldview, and I keep everything in perspective. I'm not watching a film with a sex scene for that sex scene. I'm watching it because, for whatever reason, the filmmaker thought he had to throw it in while making an otherwise good movie. Or, a movie with excessive swearing, I can overlook as long as the content is something that's interesting. So that's just kind of how I view it personally.
Yeah, I would say for songs, for me, because I love music and I like watching a lot of YouTube videos on music and stuff. And so there's this sense of, sometimes I feel there's more realistic expression of feeling in a secular song than in some pop Christian music that we listen to, in that it's always pop, it's always upbeat. Jesus always loves me, God always loves me, we're all going to get through this together. Whereas, there's going to become times of doubt of, I don't know why I'm going through this, God. This is really frustrating right now. Or, the feeling of loss, or the feeling of a longingness for something, or a personal connection. And you get that through a lot of secular songs, and you kind of get a worldview or a peek into someone else's worldview by the type of music that they listen to, or the type of movies that they watch, or the books that they read. And you can use that as a jumping off point, not only in apologetics, but also in faith. I mean, what does Philip do to the Ethiopian? He's like running in, hey, what are you reading? And so it started with him reading something, and he's like, do you understand it? Nope. Oh, hey, let me tell you about that. And we can use that in our lives of, again, like Clint was saying, filtering it through your Christian worldview of saying, okay, from a Christian perspective, this is how I view this book, song, movie, or whatever.
Right. So we've all heard, I'm sure, of Rhett and Link and their, story. Obviously, I listened to it because, hey, but
yeah.
one of the things they, in their particular journey is, at some point when they were teenagers, they started a band, and they really liked music, but they were Christians, and so they figured it had to be a Christian band, and so they ended up having to shoehorn a kind of Christian message in at the in every one of their songs. And when they do that, it kind of reminds me of like the Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s. John, you'd appreciate this, where they had to somehow come up with some sort of moralistic message at the end of the, where all the Smurfs got together, and they and that's why friendship's a good thing, or and G.I. Joe would get together and be like, don't,
knowing is half the battle,
do drugs. Right. That's knowing is half the battle. So, there was always this moral to the story that they had to shove in there. And that's kind of what I see in the Christian music scene is, you have to make the song about God somehow.
Yeah, Rhett and Link, I find a lot of their songs really funny. I tried watching their Good Mythical Morning. I watched like the first 100 episodes because they're only like 10 minutes long, and they're pretty bad at improv. I'm not sure how they got so popular on YouTube, but their songs are really funny. I really enjoy their songs, and I've seen them on like Epic Rap Battles of History, that kind of thing. So yeah, I was a little disappointed when I heard about their deconversion, but not altogether surprised, because they're in the public arena, and more often than not, if you don't have a very, very strong foundation of your Christianity, then being in the public arena is kind of a death knell, because you're either going to be shunned by people because you hold views that they think are dangerous, like anti-LGBT and anti-trans rights and things like that. And so if you don't have that strong foundation and you're not worried about losing fans, then you're going to kind of go the other way and become more liberal in your views. And eventually that can lead to, losing your faith altogether. So
I'd like to engage you on that. We've already completed like 2 hours of an episode. We don't have time for 2 more.
All right. I mean, maybe we could just, talk via Facebook message or something about it. So,
hey, you guys could write a book on it.
Yeah. Now, clearly, I'm not an expert on deconversions, so it's entirely possible that I'm completely off base here. I'm just saying, it wasn't altogether surprising for me, but yeah.
Well, and this takes us back just a tad, but to follow John's point, I think as parents, it's very important as well to be able to be engaged with material in such a way that not only can you critically assess it, but can you communicate that with your children? We were watching some show the other night, and it had a ghost worldview of the afterlife, or ghost had to do something to be freed to heaven or whatever from purgatory. And so, the show
Casper the Friendly Ghost, right?
I don't think so, but same principle. So, the kids were really interested in what was going on. So it led to us to have a great conversation about, okay, well, this is interesting to think about, but what's the difference between what this show showed us about, the creator's beliefs on the afterlife versus, what we believe happens. Right. And so it led to a great conversation. And I think whether it's music or movies or whatever it may be, to be able to take that and relate with your kids is really important. And I think that's the role of every parent. If you get no deeper into apologetics than that, you should be able to know how to defend your worldview and how to take that and critically apply it to things you see and your children see.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, guys?
Get out and listen to the music. Oh, what was that, Clinton?
Oh, I said, who do I look like? Jerry Springer?
No, who's the other guy that did all the the guy that does all the pregnancy tests, the paternity tests?
Maury
Povich.
Yeah. I believe there's a Weird Al song about him,
right? Jerry Springer, yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Springer.
Yeah, it's a parody of 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies. Not suitable for younger kids. it's probably his one and only song that you shouldn't let the younger kids listen to.
No, there's another one. The video is done in the Ren and Stimpy style anime. I forget what it. It's called.
Close but no cigar.
Yes.
Oh, I never really thought that one was too bad.
The video.
Don't show him the video.
Oh well, no, the video. Yeah, I wouldn't show him. Weird Al didn't have anything to do with the video, though. He paid someone else to do it, but he gave a seal of approval because he still released it. Yeah. The video I wouldn't show. The song, I think,
it is.
Yeah. No, Weird Al. Weird Al. I'm actually kind of obsessed with Weird Al Yankovic. So we could do a whole show on just Weird Al, because he actually considers himself a Christian. He actually supports LGBT rights. So he's a kind of a more liberal Christian, but he considers himself a Christian, and has even inserted some religious imagery into some of his songs. Like he has a song, "Everything I Know Is Wrong," in which he dies of an infected paper cut and goes to heaven. And they won't let him in they were upset at him because of his Nehru jacket. They have a dress code, but they let him in anyway. But they give him the room next to the noisy ice machine for all eternity. So, yeah.
And you can't forget about Amish Paradise.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Saga Begins.
Saga Begins. Yeah, White and Nerdy is basically my theme song.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that about wraps up the episode. Good a spot to leave off as any.
And now you know. The knowing is half.
It's half the battle.
Any closing remarks, Joel? Announcements? Any of that stuff?
No, I think I'm good for this episode.
All right. Well, I'm going to roll our credits. Get out there and check out some of these recommendations and hit us back with your thoughts.
Definitely.